This great replacement theory was the motivator for the shooting in Buffalo. Okay. Where that shooter had all these great replacement theory writings that J.D. Vance agrees with.
Here's exactly what happens when the media and people like Tim Ryan accuse me of engaging in the great replacement theory. I'll tell you exactly what happens, Tim. What happens is that my own children, my biracial children, get attacked by scumbags online and in person because you are so desperate for political power that you'll accuse me, the father of 3 beautiful biracial babies, of engaging in racism. We are sick of it.
I think I struck a nerve with this guy.
A nerve was struck indeed. Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in New York, a fiery moment at last night's debate for the Senate race in Ohio, a key race in determining whether Democrats will be able to hold on to control of the U.S. Senate for the next 2 years. Democratic candidate Tim Ryan calling out his opponent J.D. Vance's previous comments supporting and amplifying the conspiracy theory that Democrats seek to replace white voters through their immigration policies. Comments just like this.
Democrat politicians who have decided that they can't win re-election in 2022 unless they bring in a large number of new voters to replace the voters that are already here. That's what this is about. We have an invasion in this country because very powerful people get richer and more powerful because of it. It's not bad policy, it's evil, and we need to call it that.
Immigration is evil. They seek to replace you. That was J.D. Vance. I don't know who showed up at the debate, but Vance is just one of many in the Republican Party who are embracing this racist and extremely divisive false conspiracy theory. At a rally just last week, rising star in the GOP, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we've been talking about, said this, quote, Joe Biden's 5 million illegal aliens are on the verge of replacing you, replacing your jobs, and replacing your kids in school, end quote. Viewers of playoff baseball games have recently been subjected to some particularly horrific and reprehensible new advertisements, so racist. They're drawing parallels to the Willie Horton ad of 1988. We're not going to show you the full advertisement. We're not going to amplify it here, but here's a little bit of what we're talking about.
You worked hard for your piece of the American dream, and now it is being stolen from you. Joe Biden and the Democrats have erased our southern border. They released a record number of illegal immigrants into our country, all at your expense.
There's more where that came from. Another even more alarming ad by the very same group and brainchild airs in Pennsylvania, and it shows men with machine guns terrorizing cities and blaming Democrats for, quote, a hell of violence, bloodshed, and death. Columnist Will Bunch writes in the Philadelphia Inquirer that the comparison to that infamous Willie Horton ad isn't even fair to the Willie Horton ad. He says, quote, that spot, which attempted to stir up racial panic by misleadingly, of course, linking Democrat Michael Dukakis to a black inmate who committed a rape and murder after a weekend pass, only aired on TV one time because just 34 years ago, even most Republicans found it too crude and over the edge. Listening to that 1980 spot and the tone that offended many folks back then seems calm and measured compared to the natural-born killers on acid vibe of the 2022 attack ads. Today, any and all guardrails have been taken down. And who's behind the guardrails ads? Well, the new group called Citizens for Sanity, the leaders of which are associated with the America First Legal Foundation. Stay with us. Their president is none other than former Trump White House official Stephen Miller, the brains behind some of the most horrific and tragic policies, things like the family separation policy at the southern border. The mainstreaming of the great replacement theory by one of the 2 political parties in America is where we begin the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Tim Miller is here. He's a writer at large for The Bulwark. Also joining us, New York Times columnist Charles Blow, and Frank Figliuzzi's back, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence. They are all MSNBC contributors. Tim Miller, I'll start with you. J.D. Vance might be the one place where Trump has said one thing that I kind of agree with. He's pathetic. And I wonder what you make of his reaction last night. He is proud when he's on Tucker Carlson to be a defender of and an advocate for this theory of great replacement, white replacement. What's he talking about on the debate stage?
Yeah, well, no doubt that he struck a nerve. And this is, kind of the hit dog hollers element of these sort of political campaigns. I think that he reacted like that because somewhere deep inside J.D. Vance, he does feel a little bit of shame over the fact that he's advancing these kind of great replacement theories. I think that there are some sociopathic folks, maybe it's Stephen Miller who's running these ads and Trump himself, who don't feel that way. But it wasn't that long ago that J.D. Vance was worried about Donald Trump, that he was palling around with his friends in Hollywood on his Netflix movie, right? Like, this is, somebody that when he was on a panel at Mitt Romney's confab in Park City, I had friends of mine before he started to run who were there who said, this guy sounds like he might run as a Democrat. It's like a Joe Manchin type, culturally conservative Democrat. J.D. Vance knows better. He knows that he's trafficking in racism. He knows that that might have an impact on his family. He sees it because he gets, as he said, the trolls attacking him. And so rather than be accountable to himself, rather than to behave as he knows he should behave, he lashes out at Tim Ryan, right? Because he knows that he's guilty. It's the classic behavior of somebody that is guilty and knows that they're guilty. And I think that the type of rhetoric that him and Tucker Carlson have trafficked in is obviously reprehensible, but also just one other thing that's important to mention. It's unfactual because new immigrants can't vote. This is just another important, basic fact about how stupid this conspiracy theory is. We have to say this. If you come across the southern border, and even if the Democrats did want, more people to come across the southern border, it's not as if they can immediately start voting. There's a very long process here to becoming a citizen in this country. And so, it's nonsense, it's bigoted, and J.D. Vance knows that.
Charles Blow, these are the final weeks of a very close election. I don't think that J.D. Vance thought he'd be statistically tied with Tim Ryan. The race currently stands within the margin of error. What do you make of sort of the state of this race and the arguments being made before voters of Ohio?
Well, I mean, I think it's I'm still stuck on this great replacement theory thing because I think it is symptomatic of where the Republican Party is right now. They're basically running as a massive backlash to what has occurred in America in the last 2 or 3 years, right? This is everything from, taking out Black history in schools, great replacement theories, all a massive backlash to what they saw, which was kind of a racial solidarity in the weeks and months following the death of George Floyd, the taking down of statues, which in a lot of people's mind was emblematic of an erasure. And so that is the framework under which all of this seems to me to be happening. And I think it's always important whenever I talk about great replacement theory to remind people that there is a great replacement theory, but there's also a simple replacement fact, right? That the country is becoming more non-white. That's not racist to say that. I say that all the time because it's a fact. It is what the statistics show us. There will come a time when white people will be replaced as the majority of the people in the country. That's not racist to say that. It's just a fact. The question becomes, why are you so upset about that? And why are you blaming that on elites or on Jewish people and on a conspiracy theory? Because in fact, it is just about birth rates and death rates. And yes, immigration does play a role in that. White people are not the first people to be replaced in the racial hierarchy of absolute numbers in America. There was a time a few years ago when Hispanics overtook Black people. Did Black people start saying, oh, this is the worst thing ever, we're going to campaign against immigration? No. If you look at the Pew results about how Black people feel about immigration, they still believe that it helps the country. They still believe that it helps the country live up to its ideals. You have to interrogate whether or not this basic racial fact about replacement, why does that make you so upset? Do you truly believe that people are people and some people will be good and some will be bad? And so there's no real difference regardless of what the racial makeup of the country is. If you really believe in egalitarianism, that's how you will respond to that. If you believe that the only true America is a majority white America, you will respond in the way a lot of these people are responding, which is in fact the very definition of racism.
Frank Figliuzzi, when these messages are platformed by Tucker Carlson and then enthusiastically agreed to by, what's his name, J.D. Vance, they have a long tail. And I know from folks that look at right-wing social media that the amplification of those messages bring a lot of pleasure to some of the darkest forces on the internet, which are also aligned with a lot of the grievances that undergird the current domestic violent extremism threat. Just explain all that intersectionality.
So look, this comes down to one word, and it's hate. It's hate. It's hate of the other, and it's being enabled by those in very public leadership positions, whether you're talking about a political debate or you're talking about a television entertainment host, or you're talking about an elected official who keeps spouting this nonsense. It all comes down to the basest, appealing to the basest instincts and depravity that humans are capable of, and that's hatred, and hatred leading to violence. We know from FBI data, we know this now, the statistics show that the most lethal, the most violent form of extremist ideology is that which comes from hate-based violent ideology. That's the most lethal, and there's no sign of it going away. You know, you and I yesterday were on the air talking about